Hi everybody and welcome to the first webinar of our second cycle of our Conversation Aviation. For this second cycle, having taken the Be Ready part of the ramp up campaign, we're now going to move on to talk about the staying safe part. So hopefully you all remember, my name is John Franklin and I'm Head of Safety Promotion here at EASA, and I'm joined by my co-host.
Hi everybody, I'm Claudio Martorano. I'm the head of the TC Alliance, and yeah, looking forward to jumping in today and start talking about procedures.
Yeah, and unfortunately Chris couldn't join us today, but maybe we quickly start and introduce our panel, and then we get on and starting to talk about the subject of today's panel, which is the challenges of rules and procedures, and you know, there's lots to talk about, I think, in this topic. So Gemma, maybe you could start by introducing yourself.
Hi everybody, my name is Gemma. I'm a YouTube channel and I am head of Conversation Aviation training provider in the UK.
Hi, and Miguel.
Hello everyone, I'm Miguel. I'm a ground handling specialist working in different companies throughout the world. And right now, currently, I'm head of business development within the TC Alliance. I'm happy to be here.
Hi, and Nuno.
Hello everyone, my name is Nuno Agdassi. I'm a safety investigator at the Portuguese Air Accident Investigation Authority. Happy to be here.
Great, thanks. And you know, in preparing for this, I think it's been interesting. It's a subject that's so, you know, there's so much depth to it and so many challenges, and I think we've particularly seen already, you know, throughout the pandemic that a lot of organizations have been challenged in lots of different ways. I think particularly when it comes to, you know, the evolving work situation and the impact that's had on rules and procedures, and certainly in our safety issue assessment that EASA did, rules and procedures definitely came out as one of the challenging areas. Maybe we could start by throwing out to maybe Claudio and then the panel. You know, what do you see as some of the biggest challenges that we've had, and you know, why is this topic so important, do you think?
In my opinion, the reason why the topic's so important is because, especially now with changes because of the pandemic, changes in personnel, changes in organizational culture, environment, there are occasions, and there's going to be more occasions, where deviating from procedures will occur. And disclaimer out there, in no way are we advising or advocating that deviating from procedures is correct in any manner. However, it is a taboo subject, and it's a subject that we have to bring to light because it does happen. And instead of just avoiding the issue and being ignorant about it, we'd rather talk about it and talk about why it's okay in some circumstances, why it's necessary in some circumstances, and then furthermore, advice on what to do when the procedures are a hindrance to productivity and how to actually overcome that.
And I think that's the thing, isn't it, Claudio? It's the, you know, as we, you know, throughout all of these conversations, it comes back to the conversation.
Exactly. It comes back to the conversation, and ultimately it comes back to the whole point about safety, being safe. Is the procedure actually hindering the safety? In which case it has to change. How does that happen? And our panelists today are going to give examples of the challenges that there are with some procedures, and then give examples and some good advice, some tangible outcomes as to how to go around fixing that. And Nuno, you're already, before we actually did the recording, we actually had a great discussion, which we should have recorded. So maybe we can repeat some of that again. Nuno, do you want to get started and talk about some of the challenges?
Yes, I mean, yes, thanks, Claudio. I mean, when we talk about procedures and the deviations from procedures, it's important to appreciate that when that happens, it's because people find different ways of doing things, or the procedures are not adequate for the job. And we have to appreciate that there's a higher potential of that now, because obviously we've gone through a pandemic, a lot of change has occurred. People have changed. You will have some new people in the organization. You might have different tools, different equipment. So the point is, a lot has changed over the last year and a half, 2 years. And it is quite likely that processes and procedures may not be adequate for the tasks at hand that we're facing now. And therefore, there is a greater potential for deviations to occur. And so it's something that organizations need to be aware of and to manage that within staff.
And just on that point, I mean, we should point out as well that when organizations create procedures, and this might be seen as common sense, however, it might not be to some. When organizations create procedures, they do so for two accounts: A, to satisfy regulatory requirements, but also in order to create standardization for the individuals in the organization to follow certain guidelines, which equates to their culture and how they work and the tooling that they have and everything else. So a procedure is never written with intention to cause an issue, quite the opposite. However, sometimes because of some unknown problem, it can cause problems. And this is where we need to discuss how to overcome that.
And I think it's interesting, we were talking a little bit, again, in the preparation as well, is, you know, as we move towards a more open sort of regulatory environment where, you know, we move into this more performance-based rather than strict kind of rule-based kind of world, it provides more latitude, and I guess, you know, then makes this problem bigger, but at the same time, you know, hopefully encourages more discussion to make things more appropriate to the safety situations in different organizations, and not just, you know, to have a clear single way of doing everything that might not fit every situation.
On that note, Gemma had a great example to start with of why procedures are written in the first place and how it can be differentiated. Can you maybe talk about that a bit, Gemma?
Yeah, of course. So my point really was just around that regulatory perspective of that we have got procedures there, and actually they shouldn't just be a dusty old book or on the computer that we get out when we're being audited, either that be internally or externally by your national authority. They need to be a helping hand. And Nuno picked up that actually, you know, we've had a mass change with personnel, and if we hadn't have had the pandemic, we'd all be sat here now thinking, gosh, how many new people have we got into the business? You know, if we'd have had this amount of new people and new churn around the industry, we'd have all been going, God, what's going on? You know, but this is a real opportunity for us. New people bring fresh eyes. Yeah, it's just making sure that during that downtime or the last 18 months, we have kept up to date with the procedures, which can be challenging, can't it? You know, it takes a lot of time and effort, and we need to put some resource into that to make sure that our processes and procedures and working instructions, whatever form they come in, are useful to the individual and actually do show exactly what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, and they're not archaic. And actually, you know what, we used to do it like that when we had this system, but now we've got a new system, it's been updated, we haven't updated the process. Well, yeah, you haven't updated the process because you haven't got enough time, you haven't got enough resource to be able to update the process. That feels like it's not actually a safety related process, doesn't it? You know, the thing is, does everybody know how to use that process? Are they happy with the new system? Yes. Okay, happy, tick those boxes. Actually, you think, oh, I can just put off updating that process, the written procedure, until next week. I'll do it next week. And then next week comes along and something else gets in the mix, and that keeps getting pushed back, doesn't it? 100%. But having a new person, they're going to go, why is this breakdown like that? That doesn't make any sense. You're telling me it flows like this. Well, it doesn't flow like that because I got to step 3. And all of a sudden, step 3 is not. There's no option to do that. Yeah. So
100%.
It does take time and effort, and that's something that we, as an organisation, just need to make sure that we're giving the people the resources to be able to do that. You know, and right now, with everybody's under so much pressure, time pressure, you know, ramping up, let's take all of the work that we can do. It is something that could be seen as being, oh, we'll do it tomorrow. And of course, tomorrow needs to be done.
Tomorrow never will come. It has to be done today.
And I think that highlights quite nicely what we were thinking about in terms of the role of organizational culture and the impact that has on, you know, the conversation around procedures. You know, we talked about new people coming into organizations, particularly now as operations ramp up, and that providing opportunity. And we were also talking about then thinking there are many organizations, there are many situations where it's not just about a single organization. Miguel, maybe you can expand a bit more on the situation we have on the ramp, where you've got one ground handling organization working with multiple airlines, and actually it's not just about the one organization's procedures, it has a wider impact, doesn't it?
Yeah, in ground handling, obviously more than ever, things like working instructions, briefings, pre-briefings are more important than ever, because we've got that mix of airlines which have new airlines, airlines which have a different fleet, new staff, staff which are coming back from furlough, back into operations. So obviously there is that risk there that procedures may not be understood, or that procedures may not be understood from the perspective of the staff in operations, not in the ramp area, and especially also in the customer services area, which is also an area which has been affected a lot by the pandemic recently, where procedures basically changed nearly on a weekly or daily basis. But going back to the ramp, yeah, one of the things in the ramp, one of the risks in the ramp, obviously, is all those procedures in place with different type of operators, different type of airlines. You've got the staff who's just come back from furlough, who isn't familiar with an airline, or if it is familiar with an airline, the aircraft which they used to operate that airline no longer comes. They've downgraded the airline. So there is obviously an importance more than ever for those procedures to be clear and to be understood, why the procedures are in place and the difference between the different airlines, especially in the ground handling area.
I think that bit, yeah, go on, Claudio.
I was just going to say, I added onto that, the big challenge with a lot of procedures, especially now, is that the organization's responsibility is to disseminate this information, is to disseminate procedures to the employees and to the staff. And there's got to be a mechanism for feedback as well, because the individuals have to have the integrity and the responsibility to actually identify the organization when those procedures are wrong. Especially in your circumstance where you're talking about, Miguel, where you've got maybe one ground handling company dealing with 20 airlines, for example. They've got to be able to actually have that feedback and how that's done. Have you found any examples of how that can be done and the best practices for that?
More than ever, there's been a very clear communication flow from the management, from the procedures, to try and highlight some of the things, because a lot of the procedures, haven't actually been tested. So a lot of them have been modified, as especially in the customer service area. In the ramp area, it hasn't been that affected. Obviously, with the pandemic, there have been less on changes on the ramp area, but in the customer services area is where we've seen that we have had that feedback. Why don't we do it this way? It works better this way. We need to combine that safety, customer service, logic sometimes in the procedures, which the customers also don't understand. So yeah, there have been lots of examples, especially in the customer service side, not as much on the ramp area, but on the customer service side, definitely.
And maybe, Nuno, it's probably maybe a good time to mention that we talk about procedures in terms of day-to-day operations, and obviously as an accident investigator, you see the situation when things kind of go wrong to the biggest degree possible, but there's always this challenge, isn't there, of outcome bias that kind of leads you to decide what's appropriate and effective depending on the outcome, rather than stepping back from that. Do you think?
Yes, I think this is really one of the challenges in our activity in not only accident investigation, but even on the safety management side, that invariably we do have a tendency to look at things based on their consequences, and rarely are we able to take a step back and look at the problem. I do feel that often in organizations, people are driven by consequences. They will look at things from a consequence point of view, and therefore until there's an ability to really take a step back and look at the root cause of things, then it does become a challenge to resolve issues. And when we look at procedures, it's very much related to that, right? If someone broke the procedure and there was no damage to the aircraft, or there was no damage to anyone else, then possibly it won't have the same importance, or it won't attract the same attention as if there was other consequences to that. And it really does require a high level of safety awareness and safety mindedness for people to go beyond that and be able to pick out what is really important regardless of the outcome.
I think you made
and it was interesting.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, maybe you saw me jumping around with the camera. It's kind of interesting that, you know, my own procedure before I started was make sure my laptop was plugged in. And with some of the technical challenges we had at the start, I didn't double check it. And ironically, I just had a panic because I'd failed that step in the procedure. And, you know, again, sometimes, you know, it's easy to be distracted. And, you know, there's so many situations very visible to me there in a short space of time that, you know, even something really simple can have potentially a good or bad outcome.
But I did love the fact that you brought up there, Nuno, as well, about the kind of cultural environment. And when there's not an issue and somebody deviates from procedure, nobody really cares about it. But when somebody deviates from procedure and something goes wrong, all of a sudden it's a big mess. And especially from a maintenance perspective, like from my own, you know, personal experiences in the past, I saw this a lot, where the procedures were known to be wrong, I'll use inverted commas, and when we were deviated against and everything went okay, it was fine because everybody was safe and therefore nobody really said anything. But if somebody did something away from procedure and there was a small incident, everything was wrong and the individual was wrong. I think especially now that the pandemic's, you know, coming up back to some kind of normality and things are coming back, people are going through kind of a well-being issue whereby they're scared a lot of the times. They're scared that if they don't follow procedure, they're going to get fired or there's going to be issues going to happen. I think more than ever, we have to actually identify now that actually there's got to be a better communication between the individuals and the organizations to identify that actually deviating from procedures is not that it's acceptable, but it has to be highlighted when it's okay, because if the procedure itself is causing a hindrance and is to do with safety, it's got to be highlighted, because ultimately every procedure should be for safety. And if it's causing a hindrance, it has to be actually identified and brought up to management and quality.
Yeah, I think go ahead. I think it comes back to what we were mentioning earlier, right? It's when it comes to procedures, on the first hand, people who wrote those procedures did them with the best of intentions.
Exactly.
And so it becomes an integral part of running your business, counting on the frontline people who are using those procedures to give you feedback on what works, what doesn't work, or what has changed in the meantime since those procedures were written. And so, and for that to happen, you come back to what we typically see as the common issue, which is the organization's safety culture. And in fact, the whole environment in which people operate, okay? This applies not only to frontline staff, but also to managers and the whole environment where business occurs in that company invariably has an effect on safety. And if there is the right attitude, there's the right level of understanding and safety mindedness in the frontline operators, and the organization's safety culture allows that, then invariably people, when they deviate, they will let you know. And when they identify things, they will proactively also raise their hand. So there's a lot to be gained out of that, right? You could potentially avoid a multi-million-dollar check of damages caused because something didn't go well, or there was a procedure which was inadequate, by just creating the right culture and providing people with some training.
Yeah, if you think training's expensive, try an accident.
Exactly.
But even the procedure it's not just there for the end accident. You know, obviously that's the main reason why we put them in place, and that's what we're all trying to avoid. But we can also bring it right back to roots and saying, from a well-being perspective, a lot of these people's our employees or our new employees, their stress levels might be quite high at the moment because of the pandemic and the last 2 years, or the workload that they're going through. This procedure, your working instruction, could actually be there holding hand. You know, it could be there to be at 3 o'clock in the morning when they haven't got a whole team around them that they can go and ask, because there's not that many people on the shop floor at the moment. Or, you know, it should be there to be able to try and relieve some of that stress and support them a little bit without having to go and ask lots of questions here, there and everywhere. So I do also think it can be brought right back down to grassroots level.
And interestingly, I was going to say, kind of one of the key things of all of this is exactly that, is something we've been talking about a lot in all of our Together for Safety promotion, is the concept of always remembering that the purpose is ensuring safe and effective operations. And as you were saying there, Gemma, we talked a lot throughout the pandemic about the importance of well-being and psychological safety and the impact on human performance, and then how that ensures safe and effective operations. So, you know, always ensuring that, kind of having that eye on, yes, there is a procedure because it's there to stop an accident or stop a thing, but it's always looking at what does that contribute ultimately to safe and effective operations in whatever way, rather than just focusing on it, kind of, you know, the pure reactive nature of the process stopping something bad happening. It's much wider than that, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And especially for, you know, it's easy to be able to relate it to the accident from a front end roles. It's a bit harder when you're in a more of an office-based role to then have to relate it, because there's so many holes in the Swiss cheese before an accident can happen, you know, or does happen. So it all has to align, and you're maybe in an office environment 5 or 6 steps back from that. And so it's reminding them, actually, these are for you as individuals as well. It's not just for the accident and worst case scenario.
And I think that's one of the things that we, throughout these conversations we've been having, is it's about the conversation, and then whether that's between, as we've talked about a little bit already, between the organizations and how they interface with each other within the organization, and then at the operational and that general level is between operational teams as they work, and then for people as individuals. And it's, you know, the more we can encourage the kind of conversations that, you know, we've been talking about, you know, opening up the discussions on the challenges and how we solve them practically, is such an important part of that.
Now that we're coming to the end of the 20 minutes, maybe it's time for maybe a call to action. And what I'd like to do is maybe go around everybody, and I'll actually start myself, and maybe give some advice to both individuals and organizations as to what can be done in this circumstance. So from my own point of view, I would just like to kind of point out to everybody, in both individuals and organizations, that when procedures are written and how they're written, try not to be ignorant about it, and try not to have the arrogance that you think you know better than the procedure. If there's an occurrence where there's a deviation, talk to the organization, have an open communication about it, and feel empowered that you can go to quality and actually bring it up, because it is a safety related issue, and always have the safety related issue on mind. That's just my 2 pence. Gemma, how about you, Seth?
Mine would be to ask a new person to red pen it. You know, if they come with a fresh pair of eyes, ask that new person to go through it and actually, do you understand it? Does this bit make sense? If you actually, that task, would you be able to do it without having anybody else behind you? Yeah, that would be my top tip, is go and ask a newbie.
I like that one. Thank you. Miguel?
Yeah, mine would be something related to Gemma's idea. Those who are coming back into operations, make sure, ask them how they feel, allow them to give their opinions on the operations, on those fresh eyes, and have allow them also to ask their questions, their doubts. It's absolutely understandable that someone coming back from operations will have their questions. So it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to review and ask someone, even if it's at a different level below, how does this work? How do we do this? What does this airline do? And if there's an idea or something to report, allow them to have that clear communication channel to be able to report it.
Excellent, thank you, Miguel. And Nuno?
Well, I mean, we talked about safety culture and the just culture within the organization. I would say, in line with what my colleagues have mentioned, it's really important for organizations to appreciate that, well, as always, but even more so during this period that we are experiencing of a ramp up, where there's lots of new people coming into the organizations, where at times the existing staff are quite overwhelmed with the pickup of activity, and we see that in airlines and other service providers as well. It's key to foster a healthy safety culture, to create fertile ground for safety to flourish, for people to speak up, for there to be open lines of communication, so that the opportunity is there to pick up on issues which are not right, procedures which are not adequate, for behaviors, for equipment, for tools which are not working properly, and really hopefully proactively identify issues before they really cause a problem. And so this is really a common message throughout the safety theme. Is one of the key conditions, but I think it's more important to do that now, and especially to take advantage of the new people joining organizations at this point. They will have experience from other companies, they will have their own previous experience, and really that will at times be a benefit and an opportunity to look at things with a fresh pair of eyes and possibly do them differently to the benefit of safety.
If I can just step in and say, throughout the old, bring in the new would be the idea with regards to safety. It's an opportunity, I think, to reconfigure our safety procedures and how they're communicated.
I like the fact of how they're communicated and how they're actually communicated to everybody, and not just disseminated, but actually communicated with a feedback option as well. So thank you all very much. John, have you got any final comments?
Yeah, for me, it continually comes back to, people are probably hopefully not getting fed up with me beating the drum about the conversation and the need for creating this, these learning environments where people can talk about the challenges, and all of the things that all of the panelists have mentioned is creating that environment where the discussion is something that's just normal, that helps us understand the challenges and risks and enable us to have safe and effective operations every day.
Excellent. Well, thank you all very much for today, and thanks for all the panelists and all the great discussions. And hopefully everybody will be able to take away from that something tangible and be able to have these conversations within their organizations and further abroad within the field, within the industry. Thanks very much, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for me to everybody for the discussion. Join us next week when our topic's going to be around risk management, and when we say in the ramp up campaign, know your risks and mitigate them effectively as part of a resilient management system. It's kind of easy just to write down, but not so easy to do. So be interesting to have some experts talking about that next week, and look forward to seeing Nuno as well on the live part of the Stay Safe campaign in a couple of weeks as well. So thanks very much, everybody.
Looking forward to it. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Gemma. Thanks, Miguel. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.